welcome back for our next webinar. Thanks for joining me today. We've got people from around the globe again. We've got across the US and Canada. We have Australia, we have Sweden, the UK. Early morning now in Australia, and most of it, I know somebody said 8 o'clock, depending, I guess, which area you're in. But thank you all for being here. I much appreciate it. So today I'm going to kind of move a little quickly. I have 6 projects for you just to give you some different ideas of not only how you can, use your plugins and textures, of course, to create your images, but also to kind of look at the mood of your images as you're going along. And I recently had done a few of these and went, yeah, this would make a good, not only kind of showing some of the plugins, but also kind of what I was going for with some of these. So let's dive in. I'm going to first open up, the first one I'm going to start with an HDR. So I'm going to open up my Nik selective tool, and I'm going to use the HDR Effects Pro 2, the merge version, because I'm going to merge 3 images for this one. So we get this to open up, and I'm going to go into the open. And I have to go to my folder. I should have done this already, I guess. My webinars and today's. So I'm using these 3 right here, these first 3 images, and these are raw files. And say open. And I'm going to go ahead and get my merge dialog. You can do a smart object if you wish. I get asked about this all the time. It never became part of my workflow, and I just kind of don't think about using smart objects, and I know I should, but I don't. So I use lots of layers, and it works for what I do. So this is going to load our images, and then we can make some selections here. So I always leave everything, the alignment checked on, because you want it to, if there was any movement, it will align the images for you. I don't have anything moving in this one, so I'm going to uncheck the ghost reduction. Excuse me. And as I process this, I really didn't see any chromatic aberrations. You can, once you start moving one of these sliders, it will give you a box that you can kind of drag around and look at your edges. I find that happens more when you have a very bright sky. You tend to get some of those kind of reddish, greenish kind of edges around there. So on this one, I'm not going to really change anything. I'm just going to say create my HDR. And that's going to bring it in here, and then we can choose a preset. I usually like to start with a preset, and then you can fine tune it. As always, you're not limited to just the preset as is, but it's always a good starting point, I think. So for this one, I went down to number 17. And it's called, appropriately enough, Sinister, because I'm kind of going for a dark, moody look on this image. I'm trying to tone down some of the stuff in the background and just make this truck really be what stands out in this image. And I liked this one, kind of gave it a little more grungy look, and it gave it a very faded look to the colors, which I liked. And then I made a couple changes over here on the tone compression. I backed off just a little bit to 67, and that's how much of that kind of HDR look that you get is the tone compression. And then under tonality, I brought the blacks all the way to 100%, and under colors, under saturation, I brought that back just a couple percent more, about 62. And then we're going to say OK to come into Photoshop with our merged image. And of course, I'm going to be doing a couple different things with this. We're going to next go into the Topaz Photo AI. So that's our merged image here. So I'm going to duplicate this layer with a Control J. It'd be a Command J on a Mac. And we're going to go up to our filter, Topaz, and I'm going to go to the Photo AI. And this is their latest interface, which is really, it gives you the denoise, sharpen, and gigapixel all in the same place. For this one, it's looking for faces, but there aren't any, so that's okay. So it's found the subject. So we're going to do turn on remove noise when it finishes. There we go. And then sharpening I left off because when I sharpened it, the detail in here just got really crunchy, and I just really didn't need that. We'll do a little bit of sharpening with Luminar next, some structure and detail. And then I did do enhance resolution and left this on natural. And we're going to give that, it's updating down here in the lower left. You can see the updated the preview. So on the left is our before, on the right is after, and you can see how it's gotten that looking better. So I'm going to save that back to Photoshop. And it takes a few seconds. They are raw, is still, well, it's not really a raw file now. It's more a TIFF because I brought it into Photoshop. But they were originally raw files, so they are large. And this goes through the various processes here. And then next I'm going to go into Luminar Neo and do some structure and details in there to crisp it up a little without getting over the top. And then we're going to add some textures as well. This is probably the longest part of this process, so unfortunately. So I don't have any questions yet. We're still early, so thanks everybody for logging in. I know a lot of people are still jumping in. We're still on our first project. It's getting there. I need Jeopardy music. I say that every time I wait for a plugin to finish. There we go. So you can see our before and our after. It's not a major change, but it definitely did get rid of some of the little bit of noise that was in here and cleared it up a little bit. So now I'm going to, and if you like, you can always rename your layers so you remember what you did. And then I'm going to duplicate that again and go into my Skylum, Luminar Neo. If you haven't gotten Luminar Neo yet, I just got an email from them today. They're going to have a pretty good Black Friday sale, and it's going to be starting on Friday. So in Sunday's blog, I will have that info. Trying to get all my blogs lined up before we leave for Arizona next week. All right, so in here, I'm going to go right to the Edit tab. I'm not going to use a preset. And I'm going to go to my Enhance AI, and I'm going to accent about 22. And this is kind of a good overall place to start. With your images in Neo, it adds not really sharpening, but it does crisp things up a little bit, and I'll push it farther so you can kind of see what it does. It brightens it slightly. If you go too far, of course, it gets that over-processed look, but it does a nice job of improving your images. And then I'm going to go to structure, and we're going to add a little bit more here. And this is what I do instead of sharpening. I like this better. And then details adds a little more. I like to do just the small and the medium a little bit to just add that little extra crispness. So we'll apply that to come back to Photoshop. Jean asks if I find Photo AI better than the individual apps of Sharpen and Denoise. I'm not having much luck with Photo AI. I've heard it both ways. I haven't used it a ton yet myself to really make that decision, but I did try and do sharpen. Was it sharpening? Yeah, I was doing sharpening on something last week, and I didn't like the way it came out in Photo AI, so I used the individual program, and I did like that better. I know it all has to do with the different, algorithms this stuff all processes with, but yeah, it's something I think that will still, continue to get refined as the AI gets smarter. So I'm going to bring in a texture next. I'm going to bring in one of my grunge grays. And we're going to stretch this out. And again, if you've seen me work before, you know I have two monitors, so I'm dragging things from the other screen because it speeds up the process and puts it right here in my image. I'm going to change my blending mode to multiply. And I did choose this one because it had that like vignette built into it, because I am looking to tone down those sides, and I left this one at 100%. And so what I'm going to do is I want to take off a little bit of this texture with a mask in the center. So I'm going to use this layer below it and click on my quick selection tool and select subject. And I'm going to let Photoshop find the subject for me. These cars are in, this is Old Car City in White, Georgia. It's like 30-something acres of old cars with trees growing out of them and all kinds of fun things. Yeah, critters crawling around. You might find some snakes or something. So this did a pretty good job of selecting my car. I have selected a little bit too much up here. Not a real big deal. I just want to get some of that texture off of the car itself. So now that I have that, I'm going to go back to my texture layer and click on my add a layer mask. And it's actually going to mask it opposite of what we want. It masks the background, and I want to mask the center. So I can just do make sure your mask is highlighted and do a Control-I to inverse it. So you can see now we have the texture on the background, but nothing on the car. But I want to leave a little bit of the texture on there. So if you double click in your layer mask, it will open up a properties box, and you can lower the density of the mask, which is like the opacity. And I'm going to bring it to just about there. So this got a little lighter black. It's more of a gray now. You can see if I pull it down, it will get more gray. So we're letting some of that texture show, but not a whole lot. And then I'm going to bring in one more texture. I'm going to use another gray. I decided to use grays because I didn't want any color added to the image. I just wanted some of the texture. And remember, you can always change a texture to black and white to use it. Just do a black and white adjustment layer and clip it to your texture layer. And you can use any texture as a black and white. And this one I'm also going to change to multiply. And I'm going to use this same mask. So you can highlight your mask, hold down the Alt on a PC, Option on a Mac key, hold that down, click and drag it, and it will duplicate that mask to your other layer. And then I'm going to change the density of this one to about 90%. So I'm getting a little less of that texture. And then I decided, I left it this way on purpose, because after I did these textures, I decided I should have cropped this a little bit. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to turn off my two texture layers so I can't see them right now, and click on my image. I'm going to select my crop tool. And for this process, because I don't want to lose the sides of my textures, make sure that the delete crop pixels is turned off, because I don't want to get rid of them. I usually leave that on because if I'm going to crop something and then go into one of the other plugin programs, I want it to see that cropped version. So in this case, I don't, and I'm going to now crop a little bit over here. over here. I'm going to look at trying to look at my finished image. I think I might come in just to the edge of that tree. And this one I came in to about there. And say, okay. And I will Sandy in just a second. So now when I turn on my texture, if I click on my move tool, you'll see there's the edges of my texture. So now I can just hold my shift key and bring them in to the edges. You'll notice we're also changing our mask, so I'll show you how to fix that in a second. And then I'm going to do the same thing to this one. Bring this one in and this one in. And let's turn that one off again for a second so we can go back to our layer mask. I'm going to just grab a brush, make it a soft brush. Foreground color is black. Make this a little bit bigger. So I can see it brought in some of that texture over here where we had already masked it. So I'm just using my brush on these sides to make sure that the truck itself is unmasked there. So you can say I just adjusted that a little. So now again, watch Sandy to copy this mask to the other layer, and we're just going to override that one. Make sure your mask is highlighted. On a PC, you're going to hold the Alt key. On a Mac, you're going to hold the Option key. Keep holding that Option key. Click and drag it to the other layer. Yes, I'm replacing it because I've made a change to it. And there you have it. So you just hold that Alt or Option key, click and drag the mask, and it makes it quite easy. How could I remove the green car on the right? Well, that's why I did the kind of vignetting to darken it down, because I thought removing it was going to be too difficult. I kind of didn't mind it being there because there is some other stuff in the background. You could do some cloning. It would definitely take some time. Or if you had another image that you could grab a piece out of and bring in here, there's a couple ways you could do it. It would be a little bit more complicated. So I could even crop in a little bit more if I wanted to get rid of the bottom of that tree, which would probably be a little bit better and make it balance a little bit more. But yeah, like Dave said, you kind of have to appreciate, what I was seeing at the time. So I kind of liked it knowing that that was the way it is there. But definitely, it's always, personal taste. So that's our first project. Would I do it now or earlier? If I were going to do cloning and stuff, I would have done that before I did the textures. I would have I probably even would have done it before I did the sharpening and stuff, the Luminar and the Photo AI. Usually I tend to do that kind of stuff first because it gives you a better result at the end. All right, so we're going to move on to number 2. We can close that. Now I tried the new Affinity. I have not gotten it yet. I do have the older version, so I do plan to get it. I just didn't get a chance yet. There's too many things going on. Yeah, Topaz is Topaz little less so than it used to be, only because of the way things are with the, not supporting the old stuff. I try to find other things that I can use instead of it, but I still go to my Topaz for like impression and stuff like that. And I do like their, the sharpen and denoise. Okay, so this one was just a quick shot. We were at a friend's house of the magnolia blossoms. They were obviously fading. It's got all the pieces down here, but I kind of like the little bug on here. So this one, my objective was to tone down this background, and I really liked the way this one came out. I think before I start, I am going to just do a healing on these really bright spots here on the leaf and see if we could just get rid of that. Not being super fussy because I know that's going to kind of all not show up too much when I get done with this anyway. Try to get the bright spots going. And so from here, I'm going to start with Nik Color Effects Pro 5. Again, when I start doing these kinds of projects, sometimes I have an idea of what I want. Like I said, my goal was to tone down this background and make the flower stand out. But I'm not always sure how I want to get there, so I'll come into a program like this and just start trying some things. And for this one, I went with the low key filter. And that really started to tone it down pretty well. And then over here, I'm going to go to under standard low key, left that at 30, the whites, and I went to about 12. And the highlights, I brought up a little bit just to brighten up the flower itself. And then I'm going to add another filter. So remember, with this latest update, the Nik 5 collection, it used to have a button to add another filter. Now, if you want to add a filter, I'm going to use Glamour Glow. When you don't want to click the filter, you want to click this plus sign. So it'll add it and not replace what you've already done. And over here, I added some glow and brought the shadows down to darken them. So this was kind of getting to where I wanted to be here. I thought it did a real nice job of bringing out the flower, toning down that background, which is what I really wanted. And then from here, I decided to go back into Color Effects Pro and do a border. Even I had brought it in here, and I did that. I did the healing brush at this point, and rather than in the beginning when I first did this project. Well, let's go back in, and I'm going to do one of the image borders. I could have done this before I came out, but when I was doing this initially, I didn't know I wanted a border, so this was the process that I used. And I went to border type 8, and I brought the size of it down so it wouldn't take up so much of the edge. And the grunge, I made it grungier so the edge of the actual border is not like smooth, it's got some rougher edges to it. And we'll apply that. And there we go. And I really like the way that turned out from where we started here. And this I had just done basic, adjustments already on it, but I hadn't done any of the creative stuff. And then to there. I think that's much more dramatic, much more moody, makes the flower the emphasis and not the background. There we go. Oh, thanks, Jim. And thanks, Judith. I used plant identifier and it said a margined leathering beetle. That's what that little guy is. Alrighty. Thank you. I didn't know that. I wasn't sure what it was. I just thought it was cool that, I had a little visitor there on the flower. All right. So next up is another flower I did recently. Actually, I took this on, this is with my cell phone. I was on one of my Barnes and Backroads workshops, and I left the layers here so you can kind of see where I started with this. So I did, that was my background. And then I sharpened it. I did some sharpening in here. I probably used, I didn't say that. I did the basic processing of this one in DxO PhotoLab 6, another new one to me. So I was playing around with that, and I did like the structure and detail, but I didn't want to sharpen the background, just the flower. So that's why everything is masked except the flower. And then I selected the petals and I duplicated those again. So that is where we started here. So for this one, I started with some, one of my bokeh textures. This is from my very first bokeh collection. And I'm going to rotate this one this way. And we'll stretch that out. And hit our enter key. This one I did a blending mode of overlay and brought back the opacity to about 67. So you can see before and after. It toned it down a little bit, again, trying to make the background less noticeable, make the flower really stand out. So that did a good job on that. And then I'm going to do, let's see, click on my background layer, choose my selection tool, but I already did that. And add a layer mask, invert as we did earlier. Oh, because I masked the texture off of the flower. That's right. So since I already had this one done here, I'm going to use this to make my selection because that will make it really quick and easy. Let's go to select subject. And it should find that one real simple. There we go. And then click on our texture again, add a layer mask, and then we're going to invert that to Control I. And so now I'm going to take this into, it's a standalone program, one I showed in one of the a couple of webinars ago when I did some of the alternative programs. And it's called Dynamic Auto Painter, but it's standalone only. So I'm going to go ahead and I already have this saved. So actually, I'm not going to save it because I already have it saved as a TIFF. So I'm going to close that, and then I'm going to open the other program. And okay, we don't need all you guys open. This one is called Dynamic Auto Painter. And this is a really cool one with a lot of neat effects in it. If you want to do like, this is a good one to replace like the impression type program. So I'm going to bring in this edited photo. I think I can drag and drop it. Yep. So that's the TIFF of what I've already done. And then for this one, to get to the different columns, there's some tabs down here, and it did default to the presets one, which is where I want to start. And I'm going to use the one called Golden Age. It's actually already highlighted. And if there's a drop-down arrow, it means there's more than one version of that program, preset. And I went with the Neo Rembrandt. And then once you have it selected, you just click on Start. Some of these take longer than others to process. This one was actually very quick, but some are very involved and can take a couple of minutes to process, and it tells you that here. But this one actually went pretty quickly when I was doing it again for the notes the other day. So, and you can change the brushes. I mean, there's lots of variables here that you can change. I really haven't deep dived into this program yet, but even just you can see what it's done here and really brought out some nice detail. So let's see, I did that. And then once it's done, it will tell you painting finished. And then you can go File, Save As. And I mean, you can save it. You can see I've got several versions saved, and I'll show you these two in a minute because I did a couple others. So I have it already saved, so I'm not going to save it here. Let's close that. And I'll reopen the one that has it up. This is with the preset applied. Now, I really liked it. I just thought it was a little too much on the flower itself. I liked what it did to the background. So as we did before, I'm going to Control J that. And let's see. I've got to read my own notes so I remember what I did. Okay, that's what I did. So we're going to, again, use our select subject. and add our layer mask. And I want to reverse that, so Control I, because I want to mask the some of the effect from here. Let's see, did I open the right one? Okay, I think I opened the wrong file with the wrong layer, because if I reduce the opacity, it's not going to really do much right here. Let's see, let's try it. Yeah, it's not going to change it. I opened the wrong one, so let me open the finished one. I had too many versions over here, so that's what I needed to do. Was okay. I needed to open the original and then bring in this version and then make the selection and lower the opacity of this version with the DAP on top of, and let a little bit more of the original color show through. So if I hide this mask, you'll see that was before the mask, and then it just made it brighten up a little and not quite so dark. And there you have it. Helps if I read my own notes, right? I'm trying to get through lots of things. I do like DxO Photo Lab. It's a different kind of layout than what I'm used to, so I just need to spend more time in there, but I think it works great. Lots of flexibility. It's another good option to Photoshop if people are not wanting to use Photoshop. So yes, this is a Cosmos, and I think it is $89, if I remember correctly. That sounds about right for that one. If I save one of my own photos from Dynamic Auto Painter, will my photos be back to Photoshop or Lightroom? That's a good question, Steph. I always save to the folder I want it in. It probably won't go back to Lightroom because you haven't come from Lightroom to that program. I would have to test that. I actually can't answer that right now. I haven't done it that way, so I would have to try it. This was not in my garden. This was at, it's a place called Amy's Mill Farmstead. It's a couple miles from where we live, and they have a big garden. This was kind of the last of the garden. We were there in the morning, so these are real dewdrops. I did not spray them with water. It was still damp that morning, and yeah, the workshop group was there. There's lots of cool things to shoot on this property. All right, oof, we're already half hour in, and I got 4 more projects. Oh no, 3 more. Oh, good. So I'm going to quickly show you as soon as that one closes. Come on, close. Close. No, go away. I played around in that DAP program, the Dynamic Auto Painter, and created these other versions with different presets. Definitely a totally different look, and not what I was really going for with the image, but definitely there's some neat things in there that you can play around with. So it's a cool program to have some fun with. Righty, so next one up. This is actually across the street from Amy's Mill Farm, and there is the remnants of the old mill there. There's some, it's basically stones that are left, but it's from the early 1800s. So it's a very cool place. So Control J, and this is where it was an area that was like an outpost when settlers were coming from the Carolinas and going up to Cumberland Gap and heading west. Davy Crockett and all of them were from this area. We're the second oldest town in Tennessee, so lots of history here. All right, so this one, I edited with, it was a raw file, so I just opened it into Photoshop and used the Camera Raw filter for my basic edit. From here, I'm going to go into our Luminar Neo. You can also use Neo as a standalone if you prefer. I like using my presets as plugins when I can. Again, this one I just wanted to evoke some mood and feeling out of this image. So I did start with a preset. And one that I use a lot is this Clear and Sharp, and it does a good job of just brightening things up. And when this is flashing blue, it's still working. So you can see it just brightened it up really nice. And oh, there's the before, there's the after. And then I go to my edit tab. We're going to do our enhance AI, and we're going to accent to about 20. They did release new extensions this week, and I just downloaded them yesterday. I haven't even had time to open them yet, but I will be playing with those soon. So next I'm going to go to develop. I brought the exposure down just a little bit. It was a little too bright. Smart contrast. Shadows. And then I'm going to go to my details. Again, the small and the medium is usually what I do, and you don't need a whole lot to really just crisp it up. And then under landscape, I went to the foliage enhancer, just a teeny bit, really pop the greens. And then I went to glow, which is like the glamour glow in the Nick. And I was looking to, I don't know, I didn't want it to be so sharp. I always try and get things as good as I can before I go on to something else. And I wanted, you know, to get everything nice and crisp, but then we want to do some glow and give this some mood. And then there's another one for moodiness called Mystical. And I added some of that. And then if you want to change any of these things that you did, rather than reopening, like if I went back to glow, looks like I didn't do anything because Neo has layers. So you would go to the edits tab. And this is everything that I've done from the bottom up. And I went back to landscape, and it looks like it undid these because I'm below that level right now. And I took the foliage enhancer back to 0 because I thought it was too green. And then I'm going to go back to my enhance AI and make that a little less too. Brought that down to like 15. And then glow, I brought up a little bit more. And then go back to my tools tab, and now you'll see everything there. And then I went down to the Relight AI, which I always forget where it is. Relight under Creative. And what Relight lets you do is you can control the brightness of your image in the near areas, the far areas, and then the depth will change where that blend happens. So the brightness on the near, I made 2. On the far side, I brought it way down because it was way too bright. And then I changed the depth to 86. So again, learning these programs, if you have them and you've never used one of these tools, just try it. Push the sliders around and see what it does. And that will, you know, that's how I learn it, is just jump in there. And then the last thing I did was under mood. Mood are LUTs, or considered lookup tables. So the thing to remember with a mood is it's going to add basically a preset on top of what you've done without changing any of your settings. If I were to go back and choose a preset at this point, a preset would override everything I did, but the moods do not. The LUTs do not. And the one I chose was called Rosa. And that just darkened it down a little bit more on the greens. And I really like that. I thought it was just nice and moody and just kind of an ethereal sort of a look. So let's apply that. Yes, Judith, this recording will be on YouTube. All of my webinars are. This is number 29 since I started doing these in spring of 2020. So there was our original, just, you know, ordinary kind of kind of a shot. Definitely has a lot more mood. Reminds me like of a kind of like a fairy woods type of a thing or something. Just has that soft glow. I like it. I think it came out rather cool. So let's close that one. And I have two more. Good. So let's open. This one is one of the barns. This one isn't too close to us, but it is one that this is on the second route for my workshops for people who have been here before, and I have a different route for my returning people. Thank you, Amy. I'm glad you liked it. All right, so for this one, after we do some other things, we are going to add some lightning to the stormy sky we're going to put in here. And in the notes, I have the brushes. Let me type it in here real quick. And they are free. They're from brusheasy.com. Brushes, it's 1464 lightning brushes. These are, because they're free, it's personal use only. If you want to use it in something you're going to sell, you can, for a few dollars, get the professional license. All right, so we're going to start here with sky replacement, because that's rather boring sky. So we are going to go into, I did it here in Photoshop this time. I usually use Luminar, but I wanted to demonstrate this also in Photoshop. So you can go under Edit and come down to, where is it? Sky Replacement. And over here, next to the current sky, this is not the one we're using. Letting this load up. I'm going to click this drop down, and if I go to My Skies, Stormy Skies 1, I already imported this, so I'll show you how to do that. And the one I used was that one. And to import a sky, you just click on this little plus sign down here on the bottom, and you can then, it will open up, you know, your browser, and you can just go to where you have your skies and import it. You can create a new folder, which is what I did here for these, and name that. And the slider lets you make them bigger or smaller. If you want to see them real big, you can do that. If you want to see more of them, then you can make it smaller. So it's already added that sky. So now we're going to do a few changes. I shifted the edge. I brought it down a little bit. And fade edge, I left there. Sky adjustments, the brightness, I brought up just a little bit. And the temperature, just slightly warmer. Foreground adjustments, we'll leave that at multiply. That's 73, 70. Yep, that's actually what I did before. And then I like it to output to new layers because it also actually gives you the layer mask. So if you want to adjust anything, you can. And we'll say OK. So with the Photoshop version of this, it groups these layers under a folder. So if I collapse that folder, it's all in there. But it made a foreground color adjustment, you know, the masking. Here's your new sky coming in, and then the balance and brightness. When we change things, it creates all these layers for you. And then from here, I want to do a preset in Smart Photo Editor. So that is one of the programs like Topaz. It cannot read all of these layers. It will only read the top layer. So I know I've demonstrated this before. I'm going to create a merged layer. Rather than flattening this, we're going to create a layer that includes all of this, but will leave these layers below it. And the keyboard shortcut is Control, Alt, Shift, and the letter E. On a Mac, that'd be Command, Option, Shift, E. So I always label this merged so I know what it is. And then I'm going to duplicate it. And then I'm going to go into my Anthropic Smart Photo Editor. If you only have the standalone version of Smart Photo Editor, you would then, save that file first, and then you could bring it in here. So I'm going to go to my effects gallery, and I wrote down the one I wanted, so I'm going to type it in here, and it's called Natural Beauty. And there's several. The one by Media Master is the one that I used. Gave it a little extra, I don't know, moodiness, darkness. And I am going to say, we're going to just click it to select it. Each of the presets in here have different sliders depending on how it was created. All of these were created in here by users of the product, so you can add your own in here if you want. But I didn't change anything, so I'm just going to say okay. And file save and return will take me back to Photoshop. And you can see before the preset, and it just darkened it down, gave it that kind of little bit of a greenish tinge like you get with a thunderstorm sometimes. So now I figured, since we already have these nice dark clouds, let's add a little bit of lightning to the sky. So we're going to add a blank layer, and we're going to go to our brush tool, click here. So to bring in the brushes, I already have them in because I just used them. They should be at the bottom here. Yep, these are the ones here. But to add brushes, you would just go to the gear wheel, import brushes, and then go to wherever you've saved them, double click the file, and that will, it will load them in there. I already have it right here. And there's pretty good selection in this one. And I started with Lightning 16. I made my size 1300 pixels. And I want my foreground color as white. Brush opacity is 100%. And this one I put on the kind of left edge. Bless you, dear. I'm going to stick that one right there. And then I'm going to make another layer. And the reason I keep them separate is if I want to move them independently of each other, I can do that later. Go back to our brush. This one I used number 15. Made this one 1100 pixels. And I'm going to put this one. Let's try. And we'll put this one at the edge. We can always move them. And there you have it. So we have some lightning coming down as well. So if you wanted to move something like this first one, we can go back to that layer, click your move tool, and then just move it down a little. Because it can be coming out of the sky. It doesn't have to be coming off the edge of the page. And there you have it. Judith, if you scroll back up in the chat, I typed it in at the beginning of this project, and they're also in the notes. If you've purchased my notes, they're in there as well. Can you make lightning brushes yourself? Well, you could, if you could photograph lightning, which is not the easiest thing to do. There's so many cool brushes out there. I probably wouldn't even try to do that myself. Some things I would do brushes of, but that's one that I would probably not try to do on my own. So again, a little bit of moodiness now to the image from where we started as a just kind of an image to something that's got some feeling and sets a mood for you. All right, I got one more, so actually we'll get them all in. I wasn't sure I'd get through all 6 of them. So this was one that I used. You probably could draw them. You would just need to do something to get that kind of glow around the edges of them. This was one I did like this back in webinar 25 when I introduced the Nick Collection 5. So you can go back to that webinar to see how we got to here. And the only change I did to this, I'm going to open the one I'm going to work on for this project. From there to here, all I did was lower that the silver effects layer a little bit to let just a hint of color go through, because when I processed this and the other one, I went with a black and white, a complete black and white. So I brought it back a little bit of color for this one. And I'm actually going to use this in a different program that's a standalone, so let me close that. And this time I'm going to use Grunge-tastic. And this is one by Jixie Pix, and if you've seen me do some of my iPhone app seminars, I love this program. I think it's really cool. So I'm going to bring in this image. I'm just going to drag it in. And when you first open it, it'll randomly apply a preset. Don't worry about that because we're going to change that. What I like about their show, they have a ton of different programs. I have like 14 of them on my phone. I've got just a few on the computer. But once you get something from them, if you've purchased anything over the years, the last 3 years, and I'm hoping they do it again this year, in December, they have done specials every day leading up to Christmas. Some of the programs were free. Some were like 50% or more off. Yes, I did do Grunge-tastic in the Create Your Own Textures course, because you can also use this to modify textures, which is really cool. So if you do get anything from them, you will get, sign up for their emails if you haven't, and see what they have coming up, because that's how I've gotten a lot of their programs, is for free. So for this one, and they all have the same layout, which I really like because it makes it easy to learn them. They're very simple to use, but they still have a lot of things you can change. The only thing that changes is this bar here will have different categories depending on which program you're in. So for this one, I went to the Grunge category, and I used Grunge 3. And I was going just for that, really vintagey, antique-y, old photo kind of a look. And I didn't change anything else on this because I really liked the way that one came out. I liked the frame around this, but you can come over here, you can change the tone of the image, you can add more or less black to the image, enhance the contrast. You can change, there's 2 textures on here, so you can change these just by clicking in here, and they have a lot of textures. There's 108 in here. You can change the color of the textures, and then you can also change the border. They use number 1. There's 30 different borders in here as well. So it's very customizable. Once you start with a preset, you can definitely tweak it quite a bit. No, you can't use your own textures on this one. There's no way to import them in here, unfortunately. Let's see, Helen had a question on Lightroom Photoshop work and savings. I edited some new pics in Photoshop and saved them separately, bypassing Lightroom while the computer was being replaced. Can I add these pics to the folder, which now has been added to the Lightroom catalog? Yeah, you can. You don't even have to really sync it. Syncing probably would add them automatically, but if you go into your Lightroom, you can just, instead of when you click on the import key, you can just select copy and then go to your browser from there and copy them from the folder that they're saved in, and that will just copy them into your Lightroom catalog without duplicating them. So let's see if I can do that real quick. Yes, I know that. So let's go to the library. Yep. So you would go to your, yeah, I know that. It's like every other day there's an update in these things now. So when you click on import, normally you're adding from like a memory card. Just click on copy, And you have to select the drive first. So let's say if I just selected a folder that has some pictures and I want to just copy these, I would just highlight whichever ones I wanted. It could be one or all if I didn't want both. Just click copy and tell it where to put it. And you can just add them to your folders that way. I do that a lot because sometimes I just browse a folder and start working on something and don't always go through Lightroom, but I don't utilize Lightroom probably as thoroughly as I should, but it works for what I want to do. And amazingly, it's 3 minutes to 5, and I actually got through all of the projects. So yeehaw! Any other questions before we wrap it up? I was just looking, I never noticed this plus button. Let's see, what does that do? Oh, you can save your own preset. So if you do change some stuff over here, it will let you change that and it will add it to the end of that stack. So that's what that will do. That's right, Pat. Boom, and that's how it's done. So as always, just jump in and play around and kind of think about what you want to do with your image. Like I said, sometimes I have an idea of what I want to do, and sometimes I kind of don't, and I might find something that surprises me. And we don't need that right now. And there we have it. Be sure to watch the blog over the next couple of weeks. I know you're going to probably get inundated with Black Friday sales. I'm going to try to, other than sending one out on Thanksgiving Day, I probably the day after. I'll duplicate it in case people don't see it on Thanksgiving. But I was going to show you real quick my upcoming specials, which I have put in the blog. These are going to be for 2 days only. Most of them, actually, the texture ones, because I just released my second course, announced it basically. It will get released in December. And we've talked about this in some of the webinars, and people asked for more. Working with type, learning a little bit about typography and creating your own word art. So that's my new class. So both of them are $60 off, and those are on sale now through the 26th. But I'm going to do 60% off of all the textures and stuff, ebooks. Any webinar notes, if you've missed any of the previous ones and you want them, will be on sale for $6. And if you want to join me next year for a workshop, you can save $50. So that will be only on Friday and Saturday. So I will be sending those out. Good question, Phil. So how did I set up these in groups? It's a program called Fences. It is for PC only, and it lets you customize your desktop, which is wonderful because I have so many different programs that it makes it so much easier for me to find what I want. I think that covers it all. Yes, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you have a great holiday with family and friends. Thanks, everybody. I will see you soon. Have a great evening.